If the world feels out of control right now, it's because something deeper is happening beneath the politics, beneath religion and culture. We're witnessing an energetic imbalance. The crisis we're facing isn't a crisis of government. It's a crisis of compassion. And that's the absence of the sacred feminine. So let's talk about what's feminine energy. Well, I'm finding lots of definitions on YouTube. Clothes, finding a partner, sexuality, archetypes, qualities like softness and inclusiveness and receptivity. And that's all accurate, but I want to take you to the very beginning of the sacred feminine. So I'd like to share an experience I had, a moment of gnosis, of direct experience of the feminine. And I've started sharing this more, not to brag, but to help us have a consciousness about the difference between cognitive understanding and direct experience. I've dedicated my life to helping other people have their own direct experiences because that's the place where the mystery reveals itself to you. And I've dedicated my life to creating space where we can safely share our mystical discoveries with each other and grow through each other's mystical moments. Because these beautiful discoveries help us guide our lives, and they bring us often into the very heart of the sacred feminine. So my first powerful experience in the sacred feminine was when I was in Egypt, and I was on a tour. There were 3 ships cruising down the Nile. There were about, 300 psychic healers, right? People who can hold really beautiful, beautiful, energetic space. And I'm sitting in my cabin, and all of a sudden everything goes dark. Now, before you get nervous, it's not dark like an evil dark, okay? That association with darkness, evilness, that's a human association with darkness, but that's not what the darkness is. Think of outer space. It was like not being in space, it was being the space. And it's dark, it's cool, it's still, it's quiet. The ancient Chinese, in describing yin, call it passive. I would call it all accepting. It's a more fluid kind of experience rather than a solid form. It has an expansiveness, and the love has a quality to it, and I would call the closest quality to it all accepting or compassionate love. And it is like a womb filled with the potential of all life. Everything that ever has been, could be, has any potential, exists in that womb. And let's remember this word potential. I'm going to bring it back to us to consider in a little bit. Now, when I got home from Egypt, I had another experience. And this time, I went deep into my sacred masculine. And in that experience, I was pure white light, just bliss. It's energy, it's movement, it's light. Literally, light. No, I don't mean like weight light. I mean like white light. It's hot. It's active. It is full expression. I have experienced it both as sound and light. And I would add to how the Chinese define it as ecstatic. It's a blissful kind of love. And it has a generosity of spirit. So the masculine is very aware of self and aware that there are others and a desire to connect with them and generously overflow to them. The opposite of the feminine that has in that experience, I had almost no awareness of self in the darkness. There was a very light touchstone to an identity of self, a lot more aware of all potential, or we might say other. So also hold on to those two concepts. Sacred masculine energy, very self-aware, not quite the same connection to other. Sacred feminine energy, very aware of other, but very light connection to a sense of self. Okay, so everything we as humans experience is made up of both the sacred feminine and sacred masculine energy. So why does this matter now? My Cherokee elder decades ago taught me something that has been very valuable. And by the way, you may know through Mayan studies something similar or pretty much the same. But my education came through my Cherokee elder. And she talked about how we go through in creation 25,000 year cycles. That's right, I said that. 25,000 year cycles. And she said we are coming to the end of a masculine cycle of energy. And we are beginning a feminine cycle of energy that will last 25,000 years. So, because you're starting to catch on, right? I'm a mystic, I have visions, I have these experiences. Okay, another experience. Excuse me. This time, I'm in the stillness, in the great, great darkness of feminine energy, and I see this huge wave of energy coursing through time and space. And I ask, what is this? And I hear feminine. Now, this wave of energy was not just coursing across the earth. It was coursing across the entire universe. This is a huge wave of energy affecting time and space. So what does that mean for us here on Earth? The way that I see it, eventually, we're going to find it much easier to access that all-accepting love, that deep, still inner peace. But until this becomes more normal, we are seeing how it affects us, right? We're witnessing this resistance. In resistance, we feel pain more acutely. Resistance, when we're in it, is trying to get out of pain by controlling everything around us. Have you noticed that? Every human I've ever met has done it this way. When we're in resistance, we're often trying to get out of pain, and we're trying to do that by controlling everything, everyone around us, so that our circumstances will be comfortable enough for us. But that resistance comes with a price. And I want to share how I've seen that work with firewalking. Now, if you've ever experienced it, you're going to know immediately what I'm talking about. If you haven't, see if you can bring the concept of firewalking into your own life experiences. Now, the only way you're going to walk across hot coals, in my experience as a firewalker, and I firewalked for many years, I was blessed. I lived with a firewalking instructor, so I got many opportunities to choose to walk or to choose not to walk. The way that I discovered firewalking being safe is that when you go into a very peaceful state, you're in an altered, kind of heightened state of consciousness. And really good firewalking instructors have a way of helping the entire group of people who are walking kind of lift into that beautiful, peaceful, altered state. When you're in it, you can walk safely. That's why so many people have firewalked and been just fine, or maybe just a little hot spot now and then on the bottom of your foot that's usually on a pressure point that you might want to pay attention to, but I digress. So, absolutely possible to walk on hot coals safely. If, however, you're in resistance, if you're in fear, if you're in doubt, and you try to push your way through it and walk anyway, you'll get burned. That resistance comes with a price. When we try to push through in resistance, when we try to control our environment, it usually at some point does not work, and we experience the repercussion of that. Just consider this. When our nervous systems are traumatized, have you noticed how we grasp for control? When a society is traumatized, it does the same thing. Power and control. I'm talking about forced power, making things happen, especially against someone else's will, that trying to control, not the natural spiritual power that comes from a peaceful, loving state of being. I want to be really clear. Forced power. That comes out of fear. And here's what the fear sounds like inside of us. I won't get what I need. I won't have what I want. Let's go a little deeper. I won't matter. A little deeper. If I don't matter, I won't really exist. Can you feel that with me? Yeah, that fear is taking us right to the edge of our existence. So take a look at some of the global leadership you're seeing. When they're operating from a need for absolute control at anyone else's expense, it comes from fear. And that's why compassion at this time is so important, because all of us have experienced fear. In She Rising Academy, we talk about the 3 fears of separation. And in another segment, I'll talk about where those fears come from. Today, let's just look at those 3 fears and how they can play out politically, socially in our lives. The 3 fears are abandonment, unworthiness, and rejection. And if you're thinking, well, what about betrayal? Betrayal tends to be a mix of all 3. And underlying those 3 fears is the fundamental fear, I don't or won't matter. If I'm abandoned, it means I don't matter. If I feel unworthy, I must not matter. If I've been rejected, I don't matter. Hopefully this is making sense. And if I don't matter, do I even really exist? That's the existential moment. The fear that I will die, or at some level, even emotionally, I have died. And therefore, I must cease to exist. And that's the deep sacred work, by the way. We meet that existential moment in compassion so that the fear can release. It dies a natural death, as we say. Right now, the world is facing its existential crisis. The whole world. It's compassion that helps us move through this fear. So I want to share something with you from my recent Conscious Women's Survey that helps us take a look at where we are. How do we want to be with our fear and our potential? Remember, I said hold on to that concept of potential. We're going to come back to that a couple of times, like right now, because the feminine holds potential. Remember that womb of creation I was telling you I was, that sacred feminine energy? All the potential is there. All right. So recently I did a Conscious Women survey, and you might remember if you took it, it's anonymous. So I don't have the names of the many women who chose to write and comment, and I thank you for your comments. There is so much wisdom in what you're sharing, and I wanted to invite you to experience a couple of the insights that women shared and offer it as potential sacred feminine wisdom for you. Excuse me. So one woman said, she wrote, I see a lot of spiritual people staying silent on human rights issues, harm to immigrants, LGBTQ plus community, genocide, women's rights, etc. But social activism is spiritual and always has been. It's giving us a moment to take that in. Spiritual activism moves us into our potential. All right, we'll talk more about that in a minute. Another woman said this, as more and more women awaken to their power and sovereignty, how do we bring men, masculine, along in a peaceful and accepting way? Nice question, isn't it? Do you hear the inclusivity of it? Yeah, that's feminine nature, to remember to be inclusive with all. So let's get clear about what it looks like when masculine energy in men and women is operating without love and compassion. And then we're going to progress to when that energy is operating with love in our lives. All right, yang, masculine energy without love and compassion, what I call that disoriented or distorted masculine. Remember its nature. It sees the self. It cares about the self. That is the yang or sacred masculine nature. When there is no love, there's an additional caveat, but not others. That's distorted masculine energy. And as that sacred feminine energy moves across the universe, we see that resistance. And the resistance, another way that we can experience that fear, any of us, men, women, all of us, if I care for others, I might lose myself. Can you feel that fear? Can you hear that fear? If I care for others, I might lose myself. Now that fear gets set up in childhood and past lives. That's a discussion for another day because that's going down into another big look at something. So self-awareness is fundamental to yang energy. Self-awareness is necessary. It is yang energy. The key is, are we seeing that yang energy expressed lovingly in balance with its yin, with its feminine? Okay, let's go a little deeper. You might want to look at the country you live in. And we could ask ourselves some questions about what we're seeing in the world in order to have a deeper understanding of why it seems so out of control. We'll look at it in terms of politics, religion, and a little bit about personal life. Let's start with politics. Where do you see masculine energy out of balance in politics? Now, I want to be really clear. This is not about saying, oh, that's a bad person and there's a good person. That's not it. It's not about people being good or bad. It's about fear driving our agendas or love driving our agendas. So when the masculine energy is out of balance, fear is driving more of the agenda. It becomes all about an individual and not honoring the desires and wishes of the people. It's when a leader is operating in fear of losing themselves, their identity, their wealth, their influence, their right to be right. All right. Now, we could ask another question and think about exploring your own country here. Where do you see masculine energy working well in politics? And this is what it might look like: creating structures and systems in service to the good for all, equally as best they can. We see it in people, in systems, in governments, even associated businesses that serve governments or government systems. They're taking care of themselves, that's important, but also others, the people they are here to serve. And a third quality, when masculine energy works with the feminine, not against the feminine and not oppressing it, masculine energy thrives. There's another video called Two Possible Futures you might want to take a look at. And in there, I share a vision I had about an amazing, beautiful future about 500 years from now. And that is a future where our feminine and our masculine are in balance. So if you want to be able to hold a vision for the future, check that out. Now let's take a look at feminine energy. Feminine energy also doesn't work at times. It struggles sometimes with politics. These are some places you might think about in terms of your country. Where do you see feminine energy struggling or not working? Now, I'm going to give it a particular definition that I better explain to you, otherwise it won't make any sense. Okay, so trying to exist without sacred boundaries will create problems. So let me explain what I mean by sacred boundaries versus boundaries. Boundaries we tend to think of as what we're keeping out, right? That's not going to work for me. All right. Sacred boundaries, in my worldview, this is my term, is the feminine. It's about what do we include? What do we want personally, collectively, in our relationships, in our government, in our social systems? Sacred boundaries are about honoring and nurturing what you want. Now, here's the tricky part for many of us. When we've been traumatized, and I'm going to suggest right now for our discussion, when we're leaning codependently, it can be difficult to know what we want. Have you noticed that? Yeah. So it's difficult, or we might be afraid to say, this is what I want, or to take a stand that says, this is what I want. So sacred feminine energy struggles because of the trauma. All right? And we get to invite ourselves to discover what we want. And that's a video for another day too. I've got some fun stuff we can do to discover what we want. All right, let's keep going with where we are here. Sacred feminine energy can also work well in politics. And here's how that might look. So take a look in your country, see where or how this might be operating. This is when we consistently share our ideas. We want to hear from others. All people, we believe, should be treated with respect. We want to treat them with respect, right? Because we're all part of that great divine creation. We tend to want rules and regulations that support people in achieving their greatest potential together. Now, isn't that what democracy is about? Right, the great experiment for and of the people. Yeah, so it's powerful to start thinking about my sacred boundaries in terms of what do I want to include? How do I want things to be? And by the way, I have a video here on YouTube about sacred boundaries, so you can watch it. It's really short. It'll give you a little more insight than I've just shared with you now. Now, when we're highly sensitive individuals, we want to take this a little further. We can become concerned with a fear. This is the fear that I will lose myself to the pain of others. If you're highly sensitive, you know what I'm talking about, right? Right. If I connect with the pain of others, I will lose myself. And what happens is we get re-triggered. We're back in the trauma again. That happens because you've been in trauma pain for too long. And you can't easily see the potential that is there. That potential in the womb of all creation, the beginning of creation. We are born from potential. And trauma pain tends to make it very difficult to see our potential. Part of healing trauma pain is to be in compassion with it, for sure. We can't bypass it. That's not a good idea. Spiritual bypassing does not work. And also having compassion for the potential that is there within ourselves and others. That fear and pain can be healed. That's one we'll go into also more deeply on another day. All right. You ready to go into religion and spirituality? Let's take a look at what's happening with masculine and feminine there. So, in terms of your upbringing, the exposures you've had in either religion or spiritual teachings and practices, where do you see distorted or disoriented masculine energy? Let me suggest a few places that I've seen it in my life. Grasping to be right no matter what. Grasping to be in control. The religion, the beliefs that we all should have. Do you see how that denies that feminine womb of all of our potentials? Our divine right to explore? My Cherokee elder had something really powerful to say about trying to get in control of other people's processes, even when it comes from, I love that person, I don't want to see them suffer. Even then, she said, when you try to tell them what to do, make them do what you think they should do, give them advice they're not asking for. She said to me, Misa, when you do that, you steal their power. You steal their power. This is their journey. This is spirit moving through them. The Creator is moving through them and their journey. And you don't want to steal their moment of discovery, do you? Their personal discovery, right? I would say their moment of gnosis, their moment of that divine revelation within themselves that is so important. So when I started to read about Christian nationalism being advocated here in the U.S., I got concerned. You see, I was raised Catholic, and I have Christian friends. In fact, I have friends in almost every faith there is. I grew up as a Catholic in a patriarchal religion that emphasized the male role and diminished the role of the woman, expecting women to submit to male authority. I have no interest in going back to those notions of faith after having direct experiences in divine love. I would rather see us create beautiful moments and opportunities to support each other in our own divinely ordained pathways of discovering divine love and how that is for us. So I became wary because I think with Christian nationalism, mixing religion and politics in this way, that's not about loving God. That's about power. That's about power over, not loving God, loving others, and in my worldview, loving the self. Because it does not allow others who see things differently to have space for their own direct experiences with the divine and space to draw their own conclusions and beliefs. And all of this is worthy of our compassion because all of this reaction to the inclusiveness comes out of fear of losing oneself. Compassion heals the fear. Ready to go deeper? If you're still with me, you are awesome. You are diving so deep, so deep. Now, where in religion and spirituality does masculine energy work well? It's the same as in politics, creating structures and systems in service to the good of all equally. When masculine works with feminine, not against feminine or oppressing it. Where do you see that happening? Where do you see that happening in your country? And feminine energy can struggle and not work in religions and spiritual teachings. Let me show you where. Have you heard us say, light is good, darkness is evil? Let's think about this for a minute. We just said, yang energy, the masculine, is good, but the yin energy, the feminine, is evil. We also say things like light must overcome the darkness. That fits with masculine energy in authority. That works. But it doesn't honor the feminine nature. You see, evil, this is a story for another day too, evil as darkness is an association humans made, but it's not what that essence of darkness is. You look up in space, you don't say, oh my God, that's evil out there. You say, oh my God, look at that beautiful night sky. You feel the cool air and you're looking up at the stars. It can be so relaxing, can it? That's like the womb of creation. It's the human experience of the spiritual experience of the womb of creation. So when we say things like that, we're saying one is greater or better than the other. And that kind of masculine is better, masculine authority has contributed to women feeling less than and demeaned and traumatized for centuries. They've been traumatized by the abuses of clergy, by men toward their wives and children. We could go on and on, right? We know what these abuses are. So it's useful to think about how we are teaching and the words we're using and what they imply. Now, where do we see feminine energy in religions and spiritual teachings working? Well, when there's equal regard for all people, when there are no others, right? When we see that all beings are worthy of love and respect and dignity, and we honor their unique and individual journeys, that's when feminine energy is present and working well in our spiritual and religious traditions. All right, last area, personal life. How does sacred feminine energy support us all? Well, how do we see it? How do we do it? How do we live it? In community support, in listening to one another, in listening to each other's stories without judgment, without giving unasked for advice, and with love, caring about others, compassion for ourselves and for others. We can bring that spirit of feminine energy and wisdom into every area of our lives, and then build our systems and rules from that loving, respectful energy. And isn't that the great experiment of democracy? We've been attempting to do it for 250 years. I would say that says a lot about where humanity has been wanting to go, has been choosing to go for a long time. And we can continue to choose that direction during this great period of the awakening, the beginning of creating balanced feminine and masculine energy. So what does that look like inside of you? Would you like a little help with how to balance that energy inside of you, your feminine, your masculine? Here's a fun thing to do. In our She Rising Academy, when someone sits with a coach, at the end of their session, they are asked 2 questions. 1, to nurture the feminine, 1, to express in the masculine. And this is what we ask. What would you like to hold? What would you like to hold in compassion for yourself and or with others? Second question, what action are you going to take to support the life that you're choosing? Pretty simple, isn't it? Yeah. We can take it further. How are you holding others in compassion, especially if you disagree with them? What action are you taking on behalf of compassion for yourself and others? It is the yin or feminine energy that has been missing. So let me break it down even further. Yes, I know I ask a lot of questions. Choose the one you like. Choose 1 or 2 and go with them for a while and explore them. Questions are part of feminine energy. What does balanced feminine and masculine energy look like for you? And here are a couple more questions that we love to ask. What is stillness with compassion? Here's another one. What is action with compassion? Inside you, in relationships, in your community, in your country? If we build from those 2 questions, we can create the world we want to live in that honors and respects everyone. And if you want to be part of the rebalancing of the world, it begins inside your own nervous system. And I have some support for you for that. You can download the 2,000-year-old holding meditation below. This meditation is how we build our compassion muscles and regulate fear. We become women who can hold the world. And I want to invite you to be sure to share your ideas and your questions in the comments below. And for just because one more question could be so exciting, so much fun to explore. How do you do it now? How do you bring more sacred feminine energy into your life and your world? And I look forward to reading your comments. I look forward to sharing more survey results with you. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.